Welcome to the Creative Tools Podcast. My name is Ashay, and I'm immensely passionate about using technology for creativity. On this podcast, I talk to various creators about what tools and technology they use to be creative. My guest today is Mandar Kulkarni. Mandar is a pioneering podcaster in a regional Indian language, Marathi. He hosts a podcast called Vishwa Sanwad, means dialogue with the world. He has an English video podcast as well called The Agile Planet. Mandar is also a filmmaker and has made two short films. As a published author, Mandar has published two books. The first book is in English on leadership, and the second book is a collection of interviews from his Marathi podcast. Mandar works as an agile coach. He is a practicing personal and business coach, helping clients in improving their personal and business lives. Hello, Mandar. Thanks for visiting my podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So let's dive right in. My first question is, what do you create?
Um, at present, I can say that I create podcasts and also I create Zoom-based event, which is a edutainment, infotainment kind of programs using Zoom. So
Hmm.
those are the two creative things I'm involved in. Earlier, I have created movies. That is, if that fits into your creation definition. And I have recently created a book based on my podcast as well. So that is another area of creation.
So you are a writer, you are a podcaster, and you are a filmmaker. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can say that. Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So we can focus on any one of these creations or all of those creations. I am indifferent to that. So whatever questions that I'm going to ask you next,
Mhm.
you can take references from all of these creations and then answer.
Okay.
So the first question is, so I'm a filmmaker too. So in filmmaking, usually there are three steps: pre-production, production, and post-production. So
Yeah.
just like that, I'm approaching this for creations. So
Hmm.
for creation, let's talk about pre-creation, creation, and post-creation. So the
Okay.
first question is about pre-creation. So for pre-creation, before creating anything, creators usually need um inspiration, and then they once the inspiration hits, they have to record it somewhere, and then when they are creating, they need to retrieve it.
Hmm.
So for recording, so do you also experience the same with inspiration for your creations, and how do you record and how do you retrieve your inspirations?
Okay. So my podcast is interview-based podcast of Marathi people all over the world who are doing some unique work, which is not necessarily the social work. It could be in any area. And these people are not celebrities. That means my entire objective is to recognize their different way of working and working without seeing any tangible benefits in it, still doing it for the sake of doing it or doing it because they enjoy doing it. So those are the people who I interview. Now, inspiration for that aids comes from various sources to me. Initially, when I started, I had few people in my mind that but over the period of time, many people have asked me this question because until now I have published around 65 episodes of my podcast, and everybody first asks me this question: where do you get these people from? Because these are the Marathi people and they go in a very wide range of activities that they get involved into. For example, the latest podcast which I published just a couple of days back, it's a very young entrepreneur in India who is creating, I would say, for lack of any specific word, I would say gadgets or aid tools for paraplegic and old pets like dogs and cats.
Hmm.
So he has developed a kind of a wheel cart, which if a dog is injured in his back, then he provides him that cart so that his back is supported and then he can walk easily.
Hmm.
Or if the dog is very old and moving him from here to there is difficult, he has created a kind of a carry bag for a dog, which
Hmm.
is in form of a jacket.
Hmm.
So that is one example of what range I'm talking about.
Hmm.
And the other range I can talk to you about is a guy in India in a very small, extremely small village, who is a trained librarian. So he has a degree in library science. He works as a librarian in one of the government libraries, but his passion for books is so much that on his weekend holidays, he puts all the books, whatever he has collected, and takes them out to nearby villages in a bullock cart,
Hmm.
just because he wants to spread the word and passion about books and love about books, and so people should read that. So these
Hmm.
are the people. I'm just giving you two examples of
Hmm.
the wide range in which I have found people to. Where do I find them? That's a great question. And the answer is mostly I keep on exploring a lot of social media. Almost majority of them come to me from Facebook, newspapers, articles, and when I talk to people, somebody tells me about it. And these days, what started happening is when I have interviewed a few people, their people in their circle has approached me saying that, oh, why don't you interview this person?
Hmm. Hmm.
So that has also happening. And of course, I have my own criteria how to select my guest, and that criteria is extremely simple. When I hear about some person and his work, if I feel that, oh my god, I have never heard about somebody doing this work, then that's my guest.
Hmm.
So inspiration is as simple as that. So where do I get inspiration? Just like that. And I have got all these people, 65 people I have talked to until now. All of them have come from all these sources: social media, newspapers, interacting with people, friends, and references.
Mm. So let's talk about recording and retrieving. So you heard about someone, let's say on social media, or you heard from about that person from someone else. How do you record the information that you just received?
So typically, as my own scratch pad, I keep on writing the notes
Hmm.
that I have heard about this person and this is his specialty. Where did I hear about it?
Hmm.
So I keep on creating a list. It's a kind of a product backlog, and the backlog item keeps on growing all the time because it doesn't happen that I contact or I know a person and I can interview him next. There are thousands of reasons why the recording or the person may not be
Hmm.
coming on my podcast in the near future. So I keep on creating a list, which is a simple spreadsheet in which I maintain that. And then I start going through each and every item or the person on the list, trying to get in touch with that, and then deciding upon whether that person is available, comfortable, when we want to do the interviews and all that. So that way it's a very simple manual process.
Hmm.
Ideally, it could be done in a simple diary or notebook, but
Hmm.
typically I use a spreadsheet.
So when you record this information in a spreadsheet, and the the recording time of the information and actually creating a podcast with that person,
Hmm.
there may be several
Yeah.
months, several weeks in between them.
Yes.
So that duration, is it dependent on the availability of the person, or is it dependent on what you want to create at a certain point in future?
No, it depends on first my schedule, my availability.
Hmm.
Second is that person's, I'm getting in touch with that person because many times I don't get in touch with that person for some or other reason. The example I gave you about the person who takes books around, it took, after I noted his name and I thought that I should talk to him, it took me around 8 months to reach out to him because he
Okay.
lives in such a remote village,
Hmm.
and his phone was not working. I got that number and I'm trying to contact him, and somehow my phone is not going through. After lot of time, I realized that I got the information that, oh, I should use his brother's phone number to get in touch with him.
Hmm.
And that way, it took a lot of time. And once I got connected with him, then convincing him and then preparing took some few more times. I would say it took, for him at least, it took around 10 months to get the interview recorded.
Hmm. So the reason I ask this question is, like, for example, when I make films, uh,
Hmm.
because I make films, I also watch a lot of films to understand how content is created around me.
Hmm.
And let's say I find something really inspirational. I
Hmm.
have a system of like a self group where I'm the only member on WhatsApp, and I just text it to myself. Okay.
Hmm.
And but the thing is, I may not be able to use that inspiration right away because I may not be doing any film project at that time, but
Correct.
I may do the film project, let's say 2 years later, and then that time I have to remember that I recorded that inspiration 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on which project I'm working on, and if I actually want to do the project. It doesn't depend on the actual inspiration or the actual recording of the inspiration, and whether the inspiration or the person is available to talk to. And that's why I asked the question, the
My
duration between inspiration
publishing
and creation.
schedule is monthly, so every month I typically need to publish an interview, and
Hmm.
so I'm always looking for what is next. Ideally, I like to keep 3 or 4 interviews bank ready so
Hmm.
that I can push it on. I generally publish it on the last day of the month.
Hmm.
But because of all those factors, sometimes I'm so hard pressed for time that I release it at 12 o'clock at night to just to make sure that I have published it at that time.
Hmm.
Earlier, when I used to do in the earlier stages of my podcast, now I'm doing it for 5.5 years. Earlier, I used to do every 2 weeks,
Hmm.
and at time I could manage to do the kind of a bank, but
Hmm.
these days I can't.
Hmm. Okay. Um, Now let's talk about the creation part. Like, how do you actually create the podcast? So which tools do you, and okay, and another thing. Um, so usually this is what I have experienced for creations. Okay. So what there are two major steps in
Mhm.
creating something. One is to build a prototype really fast. Like, for example, if you're making a film, you build a storyboard,
Yeah.
and that's the prototype of your
Mhm.
film. Then what happens with that prototype is it helps you build the creation in your head first before
Mhm.
you actually make the creation with your hands. And
Mhm.
then the process takes place of actually creating the creation in front of your eyes, which is
Mhm.
basically uncovering what's unnecessary and then
Mhm.
figuring out uh, to reach the destination that I already have in my head.
Mhm.
So building a prototype and shaping a prototype are like, in my mind, that's what I have experienced as like
Correct.
two main steps of creation. So do
Correct.
you also experience something similar, or do you have any other creation process, and what tools do you use to do that?
If you if you think about that prototyping thing for podcast, that doesn't fit well, but I can tell you what happens to me. If
Hmm.
I learn about a person I want to take interview, I try to get in touch with that person just as an introductory dialogue to
Hmm.
understand what that person is, and that introductory dialogue covers lot many things which may be useful or may not be useful for the actual podcast,
Hmm.
but that gives me pretty wide scope or wide lens to look at the person from various perspectives, and understanding it. And then, based on that, I try to jot down around 8 to 10 questions and share it with that person, whether these are the persons, whether that person is ready to answer them, or should I make any changes, or have I missed any important area of his work that I want to talk about that I should be including. So I share those questions, we finalize those questions. Answers, we let them keep on thinking. We don't discuss them earlier, but generally I know what they are going to talk about. And then actual interview, when it happens, some questions come to me impromptu, and I don't edit them. I just ask them, and the person answers that the thing like that. Great.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's how happens.
So the first introductory call that you just mentioned, do you
Yeah.
kind of have a template for it that you follow?
No. I just keep on talking to any new person I would meet. I give them the background that this is how I learned about the person. Maybe I already introduced myself to them that this is what I do. These are my previously done podcasts. Please take a look at them and let me know if you are interested in joining my podcast and all that. So they have some kind of background. But when I talk to them, there is no template. I just freely talk with them.
How do you record that information that you gathered in the introductory call? Is it just based on your memory?
Yeah, it's I just keep it in my mind because typically after that introductory call, immediately I jot down the
Hmm.
questions and send it across so that whatever was at that time doesn't get lost.
Has it ever happened that you didn't have time after the introductory call to write down the questions and then you struggled to remember what happened in the introductory call later?
Delays happen in between, but I have not struggled to gather the questions. So delays happen, invariably happen. In the
Okay.
sense, the ideal situation is I finish a call, I write an email, but it's not practically it's not that quick.
Hmm. Hmm. And how do you write down these questions? Just by hand or in some
No, I send
tool?
them in an email.
In an email. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Um, Now let's talk about the post creation. So now the podcast is ready. And now podcasts are ready. Let's say a bank of podcasts is ready. Like, how do you release, how do you distribute, and how do you market your podcast?
Yeah.
And what tools do you
So
use?
I think we missed a step in between, which is recording the podcast.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So earlier stages, I started in 2017. At that time, I used Skype, but
Hmm.
Skype did not have recording feature. So I purchased a software which sits on top of Skype,
Hmm.
which allowed me to record the Skype calls.
Hmm.
And then when that recorded file is available, I used to edit it in Audacity and then release it.
Hmm.
Now, last few months, when especially Zoom became so popular,
Hmm.
and I started using Zoom, whether I do a audio podcast or audio video podcast, I use Zoom in any case, so that my recording is video recording, and then I edit it using Camtasia, which is again a video editing software. And most of the times these days, I just use the audio part of it and then complete the podcast recording.
So even the audio part, audio editing part of the podcast is done in Camtasia.
Yeah.
Okay. So for that editing, do you have templates in Camtasia that you use, and then you just basically replace the audio file?
Yeah, in the sense, my podcast template has got simple thing, right? Introductory signature tune,
Right.
along with just an introductory thing that is a signature tune, and then the actual podcast, and then there is a outro. So
Hmm.
intro, actual thing, and outro.
Hmm.
So signature tune and outros are recorded, so
Hmm.
they are kind of templated.
Hmm.
So I use those ready-made or readily available audio files, and since my audio podcasts are published, even if they are only audio, they are published on YouTube. So I create a kind of a image or a thumbnail picture
Hmm.
which will be on the screen all the time, even if the podcast is playing on
Right.
YouTube. For that, I use Google Drawings, where I have a template ready. I got it developed by a commercial or graphical artist,
Hmm.
and I just paste the name of the person, his description, his picture, and my new template gets created. That template remains as a visual
Hmm.
throughout the audio podcast,
Right.
and audio gets added to that.
And this raw material that you have, like the thumbnail or your intro, outro, and your actual podcast, where do you store these files?
All of them are stored on my network drive at home. So I have a kind of a dedicated folder where all the shareable or the reusable components are stored.
Hmm.
And for Camtasia, now I have a Camtasia based template, one file ready, where I can use the same file again and again by renaming it where I replace only the uh, current
Hmm.
uh, current person's video and edit it, and everything gets together.
So the Camtasia project you're talking about. So I think
Camtasia project I'm talking.
so you create copies of the project, and then
Correct.
for every single project you will replace the file. So but then Camtasia is just an assembly software. So you
Yes.
still have to store the raw material somewhere outside.
On
Um,
my drive, on my network drive in my
so
home.
when you say network drive, what do you mean? Like it's a cloud drive or network drive within your home?
No, network drive within my home. We
What
have
does
an
it mean?
internal kind of a shared 1 TB or 2 TB hard disk, which is local network drive we have created, and all the laptops on in our home are connected over there, so that whenever naturally after some time my laptop disk space gets full, so we keep on moving our backup over there. And some items which I frequently need and which are pretty large, I have started keeping it in that network drive at home only. It's not on cloud. It's
So that means you can't share those files with a link with anyone else. Those are your network
I
files.
don't share them with them anybody.
Okay.
I don't need to as well.
I understand, but it's a network drive for your home on your home network, looks
Yes,
like.
on my
Okay.
home network. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's talk about the release part. So release, distribution, and marketing. How do you do it?
Correct. So once I create an audio, when I edit the video really, and finally, because I want to make sure that the entire package is ready in a video form,
Hmm.
and then I taking out audio becomes very easy. So I edit the complete video as if it's a video podcast, but
Hmm.
once it is final, then I take out the audio,
Hmm.
and then you have to do the some kind of a post processing for the audio, right? Levels and
Hmm.
all those things. So I use an online service called Auphonic,
Hmm.
Auphonic,
Hmm.
which has got 2 hours of audio processing free every month.
Hmm.
So it's straightforward. You have to just upload your raw audio file and give the name of the output file, and just tell them that what are the features that you want. I want to reduce the hum. I want to keep a particular bit rate, and all those settings I have already created over there.
Hmm.
Within few minutes, maybe a couple of minutes or maximum 3 4 minutes, the completely processed releasable audio file comes out of that. I download that file, and that is what becomes my podcast distribution file.
So that is the release part. Now, how do you like release, meaning it the creation is now released from yourself. Like so now you are not going to make any changes to it. So
Oh,
so how do you distribute it now?
right. So for audio podcast, I have been using a podcast server called Podbean,
Hmm.
and that is what I have been using right from the beginning. So I upload it on Podbean, and Podbean allows me to write little text associated with it. So I have a template that for every podcast, I have what information I need to share. So I complete that template, like it's both in Marathi as well as in English, because my podcast is in Marathi. So title of the podcast, description of who the guest is, and then all the standard credits that produced by Prayas Arts,
Hmm.
which is my company, and all that, and then all the social media links. And for one additional thing I have to do is a tagging of that particular episode, tags of that episode. All that remains in one of the Google Docs, and like I take a copy after copy after copy for every new podcast, and that entire big file becomes part of my YouTube's description part.
Huh.
That I majoritarily use in YouTube, because there is where people see it. For Podbean, they don't see it. So only title and one-liner description I put in Podbean, but on YouTube I put a lot of things.
So for Podbean, I don't think you can import this file, right? So you have to manually select text and add it as a title,
Yeah,
manually select it, add it as a description. But however, for YouTube, you still have to do manually, but YouTube, just since it's just one text box for description,
right.
you
I
can
copy paste it.
copy Google Doc and then paste it. So Google Doc is another tool that you use to
Yes.
maintain the information about your released podcast.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Um, okay. So this is adding it to Podbean and adding it to YouTube. Now, how do you market
So
it?
same content I take and little bit by doing little bit tweaking, I use it for Facebook and Instagram posts.
Hmm.
And
How do
again,
you how do you do a long video on Instagram?
no, no. I just put a link over there that this is
Oh,
what
okay,
the
okay.
episode because all my descriptions always have a URL because my podcast is always published on YouTube, right?
Hmm.
So for one point to note here is whenever I upload it on YouTube, YouTube gives its own link, right? But
Hmm.
it's pretty cryptic, and I don't like that crypticness. So I used a tool called Tiny URL
Hmm.
where I can customize that link
Hmm.
accordingly. So, Vishwasamar is my podcast name. Earlier, Vishwasamar was the only thing. Now it is on YouTube.
Hmm.
So, VS-YT is my description to tell that, and episode number, and the initials of the person. So, if your episode is number 11, then the file name will be tinyurl.com/vs-yt-11-aj.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that is my standard, and all my episodes have that link, and that link is part of my description. So I don't add videos on YouTube, sorry, on Facebook or Instagram. I just add these links.
And then, do you store the information? I know the Google Docs thing that you said, which is the description of your podcast, but then do you store this database of release podcasts with their links somewhere in a spreadsheet or something like that? Like if I
Mm.
ask you, can you send me links of all your 65 podcasts? Will you be able to do that by copy pasting that from some document?
Earlier, I used to maintain my website about this podcast, and there used to be a single kind of index
Hmm. Hmm.
which list name of the person, one liner about that person, and episode name.
Hmm.
But these days I don't.
Hmm. So
It's a good idea that I should do that.
okay. Okay. Um, and then when releasing it to Facebook or releasing it to Instagram, do you use any post scheduling softwares or you release it whenever you release the episode manually?
Yeah, I don't use any releasing software. I use manually.
So then for manual uploading, do you also have a template for that? Like what image you should upload to
The same
Instagram?
thumbnail image that I have used in my video, I keep the same thumbnail image. There is no separate
What
image.
about the post text and hashtags?
That also comes from the Google Doc because I have kept everything in that
Okay.
the text, social media text for the posts. That is what the title of the file is. So I can, once I have created that, almost everything could be reused in all these locations.
But then let's say you're posting it to Instagram.
Hmm.
Do you post it? I think you can only post with a phone, right? I don't think you can do it. I don't think you can post with your laptop or
I
computer.
can. I
Can you
can.
post to Instagram using a laptop? Okay.
Yeah.
So then copying and pasting text could be easy, but then if you were
Yeah.
only using phone, then you have to open the Google Doc on
Right, right,
phone,
right.
then yeah, copy
No,
text.
no,
That
no.
would be a
I have been using, my usage of Instagram is very low. I should really increase that, but somehow it has not clicked with me.
Mhm. For Facebook, I know. I mean, Facebook you can release with
Yeah, yeah. But Instagram also I could do that.
okay.
Yeah.
So next question is, so what is the biggest challenge you face in your creation process?
Finding the time,
Finding the time to do the
do
entire
entire
process.
process. So out of that, um, interviewing cannot be outsourced
Hmm.
because that's what I need to do.
Hmm.
But I would prefer if I get some help for editing my audio, video, and doing all the remaining part. Once the recording is available, releasing it, productionizing it.
Hmm.
would be would I would love to get that, but perhaps I'll have to spend money on that, which I don't want because I don't earn any money out of this.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I try to save that money for podcast server. I have to spend money because I have
Hmm.
to keep on my previous episodes as well available.
Hmm.
YouTube is fortunately free, but editing, I believe it's a little bit expensive, even if I outsource it.
Hmm.
So I try to avoid that. Maybe um, once, if I really get hard pressed for time, then maybe I'll think about it. But at least until now, I have not. Finding the
So.
right time is the only challenge because I do this in my full time job, right? After doing my
Hmm.
full time job. So,
Hmm. Hmm. So have you used any automations or process improvement using already available tools?
so this Auphonic tool has got tremendous
Right.
amount of automations available, but I don't use any of these.
But that is only for productions. Like these days there are tools to even post it to Instagram.
Right, the tools like Buffer, right?
Buffer is one. There is another service called Make. So
Yeah. So all those are good services, but they are in really pretty expensive in my opinion. Like minimum, I when I did a research, minimum they take around $30 a month,
hmm,
and my post is once a month.
hmm,
So
hmm,
it doesn't make to spend $30
uh,
on just becoming a subscriber on that.
hmm, hmm, hmm.
If I'm doing 10 podcasts, then perhaps it will make sense. But for one, it doesn't make sense.
So I use a service called make.com,
Hmm.
which is a service which is a kind of like a no code platform.
Hmm.
And for Buffer and all other Hootsuite or all those things, right? You have to go into Buffer and then schedule your posts.
Hmm.
But for what Make does is you can connect your Google Sheet with Instagram, or you can connect your Google Sheet with Twitter, let's say,
Hmm.
and then all you do is you keep adding your posts or files to links to your files on your Google Sheet, and at a set frequency it will automatically take that file, that row, and then post it to these platforms. So
Oh,
so
very interesting.
it's pretty inexpensive, by the way. I mean, yes, it has a free plan too, but it also has a inexpensive
I
plan which
should
I
explore
use.
that.
Yeah, we can talk about it in at length. I can show you what I do because I use
Right.
that for my Instagram post, and the same post that I create gets published to Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, and professional Instagram post like in a second, and directly from
I'm,
Google
I'm
Sheets.
really looking forward for
Yeah.
that, such kind of thing.
Yeah,
So good,
that
good
will
that I learned about it.
completely take away your distribution
Hassles.
workflow out of your hands, and it is pretty astonishing. Anyway,
Yes.
the next question is, how has digital technology impacted your creation process?
It's all dependent on, completely dependent on digital, other than me interviewing people.
Hmm.
So it is the backbone of all what I'm doing. Without that, I would not have been able to do it.
Right.
Had I required to be setting up the audios and microphones and everything, perhaps I would have got bored because that's not my core competency. Even for
Let
recording, I use
right.
simple recording like what I'm recording with you.
So let me rephrase the question. How has cloud technology impacted your creation process?
How much cloud do I use? I don't think I use anything in cloud.
So the reason I'm asking is like when I create podcasts, I used to use the same tools that you were talking about.
Hmm.
Like I used to um, record on my machine. I used to edit in Audacity. I used to use like editors like Camtasia, which were like installed softwares on my machine. So I was bound to my machine.
Hmm.
These days, this entire workflow is in cloud. So I record in browser. I edit in browser. I I publish from browser, and
Oh,
I put it in my Google Sheets, and then from
there is
Google
a
Sheets
lot
it.
to learn from you, I believe.
So now my machine, I am free of my machine. Like I don't use, and that's the thing that I think has happened in technology, and how it has helped creators. Like with digital, it it gave a immense power to creators to make a choice rather than a decision.
Mm.
Like initially, even everything was analog. If you have a stroke of paint on canvas, and if
Yeah.
you wanted to try something different, you had to use another canvas.
Yeah.
But with digital, if you use a digital stroke, you could make a copy of it, you could change its form, change
Correct.
its color, and now you have a choice to choose from two different creations of yours. So that's a pivotal shift that happened for creators,
Certainly.
where decision to choice. And the second thing that happened with cloud is
Mm.
it made them free from their workstations, so
Yeah.
you could create anywhere you want.
Correct.
And it kind of like for painters or everywhere, you could be close to your inspiration and
Mm.
create, which
Yes.
is which kind of took away the burden of recording the inspiration in your head or something
Yeah.
like that. You could go anywhere and create. And now the third thing that's happening is with machine learning and AI is the tools are not just tools, they have a power of becoming companions for creativity.
Mm.
And that is something that I experience a lot these
Mhm.
days, and that's why I'm doing this podcast, to understand like how people are using different tools
Okay.
for creating.
It would be
Okay,
interesting to learn about what others tell
yeah.
you.
So another question I have is, so I have experienced this myself. Like whenever I'm editing a film or whenever I'm creating something, sometimes I feel really lonely. Like I feel extremely lonely with my creations, and I
Mm.
wish like there was a companion with me,
Mm.
to help me out or something like that. So do you feel lonely for your creations when you are creating something?
Not really. I
Okay.
think that gives me my own time to be with myself.
Okay, I think what happens with me is it becomes like a paralysis thing. It's like a creative block,
Mm.
where if only someone could tell me what to do, or not tell me what to do, but like give me some options to choose from or
Mm.
something like that. Then
Suggest
it
some things.
suggests something or give me like a nudge or a
Yeah.
push
Why
that
don't you
will.
try this out? Something like that.
Correct, correct. And that doesn't happen, and that then the entire burden of creativity comes on me, and and then I start to feel lonely sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so last question I have is, what is your vision for your own creations?
Well, I'll need a little bit more explanation about what exactly you want.
So, and we can frame this question around tools. Like you are using some tools right now. This is a
Yeah.
creative tools podcast. You're using some tools right now for your creations
Mm.
based on the technology that's getting developed around you, based on what you are reading, what you are seeing. Do you see yourself creating in a different manner in future than what you are doing right now?
I think based on what I learned from you just now, I think I need to explore all these tools for doing it in browser. That
Hmm.
is the first thing that I'm looking forward to. And
Hmm.
second thing is this distribution as well as marketing of it, marketing of the content, because
Hmm.
I have noticed that I fall a lot short
Hmm. Hmm.
in the marketing efforts.
Hmm.
Those are very, very important. So I need to explore that, and that is where I really need to spend more time on.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Mandar, for your time. It was great talking with you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Bye bye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you are a creator, I would love to talk with you. Please connect with me through my website or social media. See you in the next episode.